done that.
Yeah.
Okay. Artemisia Gentileschi. She was born in Rome in 1593. Obviously, it's on there. And I think this is my favourite picture that I've come across of hers. I've got loads of pictures on here. You don't have to watch them all. You can have to watch it another time.
Oh, I like her necklace. With
it's beautiful, isn't it?
I love the form of it, yeah.
And this was actually painted in London. I'll come to it in a minute. We'll go through. She was born in Rome at a time when children were not respected. They were the property of their parents or of their husbands. Women were not at all anyway respected in any way. So she was raped at the age of 17, and the prosecution of a rapist was about the character of her father, nothing to do with her. She was actually taken, there is documentary evidence of the full trial. She was tortured to ask her to recount her story, whereas the person she accused wasn't. The person she accused in a lot of the accounts is said to be her teacher, but it's actually, if you read a bit more into it, it's slightly more different than that. But it was a contemporary of her father. Now, her father was actually a painter in his own rights, and it was very it was actually a friend of her father's who raped her. Here I've got two examples of other women at the time who were painting, who were respected as artists. One of them is Spanish, I think that's the one on the right, and the other one is Italian. The other way, yeah, Italy, yeah. But you can see the style they were doing was very twee, very domestic, very traditional scenes. They weren't being very adventurous. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a timeline, because sometimes when I'm teaching and when I'm actually thinking about it, putting it into time of what was actually happening in the world at the time is quite useful. So her father was born in 63 in Rome. Shakespeare was born in 64.
Okay.
Galileo was born in 64, and he's quite important later on in her life story for various things. And you've got there's Caravaggio, who was born in 71. And then she was born in 93, Rembrandt 06. So that's the sort of timeline of where her life fits in the picture of what was going on in Europe. A lot of writing there, but basically she's a Baroque painter. Now Baroque followed on from the Renaissance. Often it's overlapping, but it's slightly different from Renaissance, because the Renaissance, they used to take classical stories and put them into sort of fairy tale settings. So if you look at work, and I can't think of a name now, and I should be able to because I've been looking at it, but I can't. If you look at some of the classical Renaissance painters, there'll be furry people. They're all very ethereal. They're not very down to earth. But her style was using, well, it was based on Caravaggio. So if you look at the second paragraph there, her style was very much influenced by Caravaggio, who was a contemporary and a very good friend of her father and teacher.
The same friend then?
No, a different friend. He wasn't involved.
Oh, that's all right.
Yeah,
just
wasn't it? Yeah.
He, her father, Orezzo Gentileschi, was also a painter, quite a renowned painter at the time, and he was actually involved in a court case where Caravaggio was being sued for defamation of character for one of the Pope's cousins or something, and Orezzo came on as a character witness and was involved in writing a obscene poem about whoever the person was. But there's lots of stories about him borrowing, because at this time they started staging pictures where they actually had models, so they would have things like wings. So Caravaggio would borrow wings from Orezzio's house. So he was obviously a very frequent visitor there.
No, thank you very much.
Somewhere or another, I had a picture, but I can't find it, of the impact on Orezzo of Caravaggio's style, because Caravaggio changed the way that artists looked at light and at the imperfections of humanity, I suppose you could say. Caravaggio changed, he started staging, actually getting people in to sit down and sit with him so he could copy them. He replaced the figures that used to once upon a time be ethereal with everyday people. He painted them as he saw them. He put poverty into pictures of Christ and his followers. He put real life people with dirty hands and dirty clothes, etc., into pictures. And basically he had a major impact, and he also developed the highly original form of, and I can't say that word, I've written at the bottom.
Chiaroscuro.
Thank you. You go.
I'm not the sausage then.
I was thinking of this.
Chorizo.
Yeah.
It was high. It was dramatic, harsh lighting to isolate figures and give emotional impact. And then we go on to her herself. Now, this picture, it was the first one she is thought to have painted, or as a completed picture. There is a discussion about whether or not her father helped her with it, but that discussion is ongoing. One of the things about Artesia is that she's
really young.
Really, she was only 17 when she painted this.
Wow.
She's been rediscovered, as with Caravaggio in the 20th century. A lot of their work was actually not valued until the last century, when about 1950s it started to be discovered. And I believe in American law, there's 2 or 3 pictures on this lot that I'm going to go through where they were attributed to other people initially, and they have been looked at again and reattributed to her. So she was actually sort of marginalized, and that's one of the things about her work. She was only 17 when she painted, 16 I think when she painted this. It was prior to the rape that happened, prior to the court case. Following the rape, her attacker continued to visit her, let's put it that way, with the promise of marriage, but that didn't come to fruition, and she was being duped. And anyway, her next painting was this one. Now, there are 2 paintings here. The one on the left is Caravaggio's way he dealt with it, and then her one is on the right. And as you can see, again, she's only what, 19 when she paints this. Look at that picture on the right there, and that was totally out of the style that women would paint. That was something, it was not a way that women would be allowed, would be traditionally accepted to paint that scene. A lot of her pictures she revisits later, and it's interesting to look at this one particularly because you can see the blood dripping off his throat and everything else. This is the story of her flophousness. I've got at the end of the PowerPoint, there's 2 little clips from Wikipedia about the same stories, but you can see they're very similar. There's obviously a link there between the Caravaggio and herself. However, I think hers is far more active.
Engaged.
Caravaggio one seemed a bit.
Those women, in one, the women are sort of retreating from it, and in hers, they're really into it.
Yeah. It's absolutely. That was just the year after she'd been raped. There might be something read into that. Right. Again, the next lot of pictures are just different pictures by her that are going to be throughout time. I put the years that they were actually painted on the corner. If I'd had a bit more time, I would have put them in chronological order, but I didn't. Again, look at the face, look at the colour, the way in which the light and dark is being used there.
Shades.
Around this time, carbon black had been discovered as a pigment. It hadn't really been used before, but the way in which the black intensity is thought to be to do with that. She was an interesting person. Here we go. Here's the slaying of Holofernes. Again, it's the same picture, but if you go back to the other one, just have a look at the difference.
The no blood or less blood.
Yeah. Now, this was painted when she was in Florence, because what happened was, after the court case, she was married off to the cousin of someone who lived in Florence. So she actually got married to this chappie and went off to live in Florence. Now, in Florence, it was interesting because she became a woman in her own right, and it was unusual. She was allowed to order her own stuff. Part of the dowry that was just put upon her head, or whatever they say, she was allowed to order her own things. She actually started running her own business, and that was really, really unusual for women of the time. So she was sort of in her own right. And she actually was the first woman to be inducted into the Florence School of Art at the time. Now, Galileo was actually there at that time. And he was doing a lot of work about liquids and way in which blood splatter worked. And they think, from what I've read, that this, you can see the blood here squirting in what they think might be actual reasonable way, was the influence of Galileo on her thinking. This self-portrait,
that's one you like,
was painted in London. I really like this portrait. In fact, I think I've seen this before somewhere. I think it's in the Queen's collection, because Charles I, her father went to the court of Charles I in about 1630 and was part of it. And at one point she went to join him there. He actually died in London, but she returned to Milan, I think it was.
Frances, you might not know, but just on any of these self-portraits, do they use a camera oscura or something? I mean, that's such a lovely pose.
Beautiful.
How could you paint yourself while you were doing that? Do you know?
That is a really, really good question, because a lot of the work, the things I've done a bit of reading on this, a lot of the things behind it is a very unusual pose. Whether or not she got someone to sit for the pose and then she posed her face on it, they don't know, because
it's so nice seeing portraits that are in action.
It's a lovely portrait, that one. It's really, she's looking around the canvas to see what she's painting. Again, this one,
it's impossible to see your face from that angle.
It is. It's absolutely impossible.
Perhaps you're
so
right.
Difficult.
Somebody pose and their arm would have been on a chair or whatever, and then she used a mirror. Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
So difficult.
Or loads of
but I'm going to do one like that when I start portraits.
It's interesting because obviously at the time there was her publicity, a lot of her publicity was her pictures, because she used her face in a lot of the pictures she did. So she did 2 frescoes, I think, in Florence, where she actually appears in them as a face in the background. A lot of artists did that at the time, and she did as well. So she would have been used to painting her own face, which might have helped. This is actually quite late. I mean, this is 1638, 1639, when she was in London for a short time. So it's quite a late picture. As I said, they're not in order, these ones. So we jump back to one of her earlier ones here. And again, it's self-portrait of her as St. Catherine of Alexandria. Now, if you've got time, or you've got the inclination to find out more, the National Gallery, this is one of the National Gallery pictures. And they have some videos online that you can look at if you go to YouTube, and they show how they frame this. And it's really, I thought it was really interesting thinking about how they chose the frame to frame it, because it's a fairly recent acquisition. But it's quite nice. This one, it's attributed to her, but I can't find any information. But there are 2 portraits that I thought were very unlike her style. This is one of them, and this is the other one. And they're both attributed to her. But if I looked at that, and then I looked at these, they don't.
The shape of the face. Yeah, certainly the woman, the Elizabethan woman, that's a very flattened face by comparison.
Yeah, and if you look, I mean, there she's sort of coming off the screen, isn't she? So it's interesting. I will try and look into more about those 2. But
and the richness of the richness of the cloth would be the other thing I'd look at, because in the first one you can almost touch the blush.
Well, it's what you were saying about the dark and light folds there.
Yeah.
And she's able to paint hands, which Rembrandt in proportion. Her hands are actually quite beautiful if you look at them. If we go back to that one, I really like. Look at those hands. I mean, they're both beautifully done. I mean, absolutely beautifully done. Proportional, but the shape on them, the colouring on them, they look like hands, not like what I draw.
I ignore hands. Yes.
Right. Again, she used to go back to her own work. This one is, again, a biblical scene. Obviously, at the time, biblical scenes were very common in the art. Before Baroque, it used to be very, they'd have halos, they'd have angel wings, they'd have, it would be slightly different presentation. Whereas these are more realistic. They would, again, look at the feet. You can see the feet there. They're real.
And the knees.
It's the same scene, but again, very shortly afterwards. Now, I don't know whether or not it's damaged the picture, but again, this one, I don't know, I don't like that one. I like that one more than I like this one.
Go back
That one
to
looks
one you
updated.
like more.
Sorry, Mary,
Flick back
Kathleen?
a slide. Flick back a slide.
That one.
Has he got his trousers coming off? I mean,
Or a
Leg wrappings.
I'm just curious about.
You have to look up the story, because whatever the story is, I'm sure it would
That's obviously
be.
very.
She's
She's got- is it
seductive,
local
I
grade?
basically.
just wanted to double
So-
check. Seen his trousers halfway down.
Then he
There's no
killed off her
David in
wife,
this one.
her husband.
Sorry?
But David and Bathsheba, he saw her bathing and decided, oh, I rather like her. So basically, they got together, and then he killed her wife, her husband off.
Ah,
so he
I
just
mean,
done
that's
that.
putting it very quickly and crudely, but you know.
yeah.
You can move
But
that chair.
actually, if you look at this one in the background, you can actually see people on the balcony over there. Maybe that's one of it. He's one of them. You don't know.
Ah.
Now,
Yeah. Didn't
do
you
you remember I said she went back to the same thing?
Yeah.
This is Susanna and the Elders. Again, it's 1639 to 1640. It's quite a late picture. It's the same scene as her first one. You can see how her styles developed and how the colour is richer in this, I think. Even though the faces on the men, it's horrible.
It's very lascivious.
Yeah. So, okay.
Am I right? Has she? Oh, is that the first? No, that's another one again. These latter ones, she's got more scenes in the background. Does that make sense? As
Yeah.
opposed to just a
If
grey.
you bear
or
with
what-
me. That's the background there. It's plainer. The colour isn't as rich. I mean, I think it's a brilliant painting, but the colour doesn't seem to be as rich as when we get to the later ones.
Yeah.
Of that one. Same thing though, but the faces on the men. Oh, and there's another version. Now this is a later one again. Now it could be that it's not been preserved as well because the colour does seem to be faded, or it just wasn't photographed as well. Don't know.
Could be.
Or it could
She's
be
got
that
the
I'm
same
looking.
hole in it. I like the big hole
Yes, obviously it was
and
one
the
of her.
detail in that.
Oh,
Right,
Oh, that's good.
This goes back to
Judith and her maid.
Judith and her maid after they cut off her Flophonese's head,
Head.
because you can see him in the bowl.
Yes.
And
Again, look at that fabric.
yeah,
the fabric's incredible, isn't it? I mean, the turban-y bit, and then where it comes down over her shoulder, particularly, even though it's quite a it's not a sumptuous cloth, one would assume.
no, it looks like a cotton, doesn't it, almost? And
Yeah.
her hands again on the shoulder there.
Yeah.
They are like still lifes, really, aren't they? Even though they've got movement in them, somehow that crispness looks.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just all the fabric, all the folds.
Yeah. Now she did, as I say, she did take do some that I don't think sort of were the same style. I mean, this one, Mary Magdalene and the Ecstasy, 46 to 48. There's a skull in that one. Sorry, you saw that one earlier.
Where?
I put it in twice.
To the left, it was.
I think her earlier ones are better.
Some of them.
Some of them.
Since she
yeah.
was a woman, she was allowed to paint live nude females. Most of the men had to guess what it was because they weren't supposed to paint
Ah.
live nude females, and that was supposed to be quite yours.
Is that why there's no picture here in the frame?
No, but
No, it's
give a
clever.
moment.
Censored.
Let me just unshare. Sorry, and share again, because I do have, if I can find it, the ones I didn't get around to. I didn't get around to putting on the PowerPoint.
So
And
her
I'm just-
second husband must have been a lot more liberated, the one in Florence, who allowed her to go to school.
She didn't marry in Rome. She only married in Florence. She had a lover in Florence, who was a bigwig in one of the families. Begins with M. I can't remember. Medici.
Medici.
Yeah, the Medici family says she had a lover, and letters have just come to light about a few years ago that are there. Right, so I'm just going to go quickly. Another one that's not by her, but it's the same. The head.
That's
It's the
cute.
it's the same picture as the one with her and her maid just a moment ago. I was just trying to show a contrast between the way in which the same theme was
Others. Yeah.
dealt with others.
And look at those ugly. Ooh.
There's a lot of decapitation going on of men.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same man.
It's the
But
same
it's
man.
always it's a biblical story, is it?
I think
No.
that's a historical.
No, because that would be John the Baptist and Salome.
Yeah.
No, but that first one, wasn't that a biblical story with the
No,
name starting with
I
H?
think it's
Palucio.
I have got a reference for it somewhere. I will get the reference for you. I will share that. That's one we've seen. Sorry, I've just. Here we are. Here she goes again.
Where's the pictures of kittens? Nice little cute things.
What those very feminine women would do.
That's part of why her
Oh,
art
was
is
quite
so
different.
important. Yeah.
It is biblical, but it's from the book of Judith, so it's one of the ones that's not
Ooh,
the usual Bible.
you can feel that nail going through his brain.
Oh.
That
Is
was
that
good.
her?
Mariano helping there.
Again,
What's
the colour on that is very muted.
I'm a bit
I bet
confused.
there's
That
some story.
knee goes straight into an ankle, doesn't it?
Where?
On Joseph and
Joseph.
Potier's.
Potiphar.
Potiphar. But what's happening there with that foot? No, the
Well,
other one.
Trying to get,
ankle's in
he's
shadow.
trying to get away, so that bent leg, he's sort of pulling away, if you look.
And under
That
him.
front leg looks really weird, that one.
He's pulling on it.
Oh, I
He's
see.
leaning
I
back.
was thinking his ankle was where the little bow was. His ankle's
No,
on the
it's here.
floor.
Yeah, no,
This is
no.
the toe.
He's got his sock cut off. Okay.
Okay,
I see it now.
Okay, there's a few more. I'll go very quickly. This is basically it.
It's a good study on fabrics, which Elizabeth picked out. They're really
Yeah.
Again, another story from the biblical stories. Now this one
Oh,
I
that's
thought was
different.
Is that
so
Madonna and
much.
Child?
That's
It's
so
Madonna and Child, but
warm.
it's. Sorry, I'm just reducing it so we can get it all on screen.
That's softer.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
much
she is, isn't
softer.
it?
Yeah.
And that was an early one again. That was when she was very young.
Well, it's
11,
nice to
7,
see
8,
it dressed just as what it's meant to be used for, rather than just being flouted. I mean, obviously,
I
they-
hadn't noticed that bit, actually.
nude females. Why has she got so many in her pictures? Is that from earlier style? That
Around that, yeah. If you
there
were
was
doing
one new one now.
A few of the paintings were about men spying on women, weren't they? So that's why
A
they
lot
were
of them, yeah.
then.
That's right. Especially the bathing ones. They were
Well, then
about.
she's a female, so why has she got so many nude women in?
Because she was portraying the stories.
And also because she's had that experience of rape, do you think?
Yeah,
Well,
I think there is that.
I would have thought she'd not have nude, because the nude women aren't ugly and attractive. They're just.
But isn't it
Well, it's
just
all
a
that
sign
under-
of the times that that's what was being
That's it,
painted?
yeah.
She
So-
wasn't that. It's a sign of the times. That is what was being painted.
I
It
think
was
that's
following that painting
Yes,
tradition,
so
I
therefore, that's
suppose.
what I said. It's nice
Yeah.
just having a natural pair of breasts.
She's actually got a halo, which is unusual for Baroque style paintings. They tend to be more down to earth. Although
Yeah.
it's portraying the Madonna and Child, it's more down to earth. I think that's a funny one as well. I think that's.
There must be bad reproduction, surely.
It could be, but it could also be damaged. But it's also at the time, of course, they had no doctors as such, they had apothecaries. But when children were born, it was the women who used to come and work with the parent and the child. And she would have experienced that because she was the oldest of 5 children. Her mother died in childbirth at the 5th child.
Oh.
And at that stage, I think she had herself 5 or 6 children. You
Oh.
won't like this one. Oh no, this one's all right. She had 5 or 6 children, of which only one survived to adulthood. Some of them died quite young in infancy.
She's very sad looking there.
Yes,
What's the
indeed.
name of that one?
Mary
Mary
Magdalene.
Magdalene.
Not when she was in ecstasy then.
No, this is her post-ecstasy time.
The come down. Oh, that's beautiful. The
So
detail
in
in
her
that.
time, Frances, are you saying she wasn't acknowledged and she was rediscovered?
She was, yes, at the time, she was actually acknowledged. She was actually known for as
Okay.
being an artist.
Yeah.
But following her time, she fell out, and a lot of her work was attributed to male artists.
Oh.
And it was only when Caravaggio, they started looking at her, there you go, penitent. I like that hair. Look at that hair.
I was just looking at the hair because first of all I thought it was the cloth, and then I realised
flowing
Yeah.
over her shoulder.
And all the colours and everything.
Yeah.
And
And
she's
there are more.
actually amazing.
You can see the
So
top
when we-
through it.
Right. This one was painted twice. You can see they're both. Oh, actually, it is the same painting. I was going to say it wasn't the same painting, but it is.
But someone's used
But
a
I
flash
love-
in taking the second
Yeah,
one.
I love the fabric up here. And her hair again.
Oh, look at that.
Do you like
like
Mary
Is it
Magdalene?
Sophie or
They're not exposing boobs either, these ones.
no exposing boobs either? No, only when she was in ecstasy. What the title was.
Looks pretty close to ecstasy there, actually.
Well,
I
look at
think
her
that
chin
shows
and her
ecstasy not
face.
more than the other one.
And getting that neck right is difficult. Oh, what have you got there?
That's the same St.
This is-
Catherine again.
Same,
The
but done in
same-
two different.
Do different styles. And in fact, she painted herself as St. Catherine of Alexandria, I think.
Yes,
Yeah, you just one earlier.
So 5 years apart.
out
only.
earlier.
And who's this? Saint Cecilia.
The patron of music. Look at
And
those keys.
It's the keyboard.
Yeah. Now
Her
that's a
hands are not as
traditional-
good on that one.
No. Again, it could be I mean, the flowers look as though they're just stuck on, as if someone's come along and
Yeah.
stuck them on with paper. It could be that it's not been preserved as much, or it could be something else. You never know.
Mm.
And that again, I think is Saint Cecilia
Yeah, yeah.
with the lute. Almost there. No, I'm not.
Right, you're doing very well. I've never heard of this lady, and I feel I should have.
She did like St. Catherine of Alexandria. I'm going to have to find out more about that.
Yeah,
woman
I'm
because-
curious about her now.
Now, this one seemed to be out of keeping with what she was doing. I'm sorry, I'm just reducing it again to fit it on the screen. Sorry. These were all
There's a
gonna be
quick way of doing it if you just use the bottom right. Do you see the little scale, bottom right on your big screen? The bottom right, there's a little
Yeah.
scale, magnifying scale. Okay. Or you can do it
Yeah.
there. You
This one again, it didn't seem to fit into what she was doing. However, I don't know what the she did at the time. The Catholic Church were obviously one of the major people to commission work, and she did do a fresco, as I say, in Florence, and I think in Naples as well. I couldn't find much about her time in Venice. There you go, Kathleen.
Full blown.
Yeah, well, it's
Most
just
people
Cleopatra though.
But she uses that pose a
That's
few
like a
times.
new lady's body, isn't it?
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
Look at that pose, the
calls it
exact
something
pose.
else.
It's an
And then calls
interesting.
it
So that's a
pose.
classic pose, is it? Was it Francis? Is that what you said?
No, but if you look at that pose, literally, that was painted. They don't know when that was painted, whether it was 1613 or 1621.
The
But look
next
at
one's
this
the
pose,
same
a different person,
pose.
same pose. And I have no idea what those are. I thought they might be bees, but that didn't make sense unless you know the story. I don't know the story.
Locust? I don't know.
I'll look it up, and I'm looking the other one up. St. Catherine of Alexandria was, as in Catherine with the wheel, as in, you know, Catherine
Yeah.
with it. But she was apparently a scholar.
Ah,
So maybe that was the connection.
yeah. So that one was painted in 1612, I think, and that one was painted in, but they're using a similar pose. These are very Rubenesque type ladies.
Yeah.
Very flat by comparison, though. You know, the skin. Oh,
Yeah.
no, that one isn't. But then it's back to the beautiful fabrics.
I'm going through them quite quickly. Again, you've got the same pose there as you had in one of the other ones.
Yeah.
Cleo, the goddess of history,
know.
isn't she? I
Don't know.
think Cleo's the goddess of history. Again, the same pose there. The same, was she at her bath? She was spied upon, wasn't she?
Yes, yeah. He
And
was on
there's
her
two
rooftop.
versions of it there.
Oh, look at the rich
Almost
colours.
there, almost there, almost there. This one is
like
totally different from any of the others, I think. And I thought that was lovely.
I like that one.
What's that one called, Francis?
An Allergy della Incanzenza.
Inclinazione.
Yeah, okay, it's at the bottom. An
Azione.
allegory is a story. So it's telling a story. What the story is, I have no idea.
Of inclination.
And this was the roof at Greenwich,
She didn't do that.
the Queen's house. She and her father actually painted it. He was
Wow.
a court painter in Greenwich for Charles I. And when the Queen's house in Greenwich was being built, this was the roof. They actually removed it and put it into St. James's Palace, I think. So it's no longer there, but she was involved.
But it
in that
does still
painting.
exist.
It does still exist. And St. Mary Magdalene again. Penitent again, without boobs this time, Kathleen. So there we are. So there's a little bit about
That
her.
was excellent.
Thank you.
And
I just had to write her name a few times.
Yes,
to
I've just
remember.
written it down too.
Artemisia Gentileschi.
Gentileschi.
When I was doing the
Amicia
research for it,
Gentileschi.
Yeah.
I found out I actually did have quite a few books about her. Well, she was mentioned in quite a few of my books, but it wasn't necessarily, I can't get my screen back properly. It wasn't necessarily about her. She was her father was mentioned more frequently, but she was mentioned. But I think this exhibition that's going on in the National is quite prominent. So it's got a lot of information. If you go on the website for Google, you will find that you can see the exhibition or about the exhibition in there as well.
Thank you, Frances.
Excellent.
Well done.
Thank you very much,
That was
Frances.
good.
Yeah.
That's really good. Yes. Yeah. Round of applause.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Yes,
Thank
lovely
you.
to see
Yeah.
so many rich examples.